The baby was already going quiet when the boy grabbed his sleeve and whispered, "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." Simone Caruso looked down, saw the infant shaking in the snow, and his face went cold. Then he asked one question that made grown men disappear. Who did this? If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. All right, let's get back into it. The December cold settled over the neighborhood like a blanket soaked in ice water, transforming the gentle snowfall into something sharp and unforgiving. Simone Caruso moved through the streets with the confidence of a man who owned every space he entered, his leather jacket doing little against the wind, but serving a different purpose entirely. It was armor, a uniform, a warning. At 34, he'd built something most men only whispered about. The Caruso name carried weight in the city, the kind that opened doors and closed mouths. His network stretched through legitimate businesses and shadowed alleys alike, a web of influence he'd spent a decade weaving with calculated precision. But empires, he'd learned, were cold companions. His penthouse apartment overlooked the city like a throne room, all marble and steel and windows that framed a world he controlled but never quite touched. He had soldiers, not friends. Respect, not warmth. Power, but not peace. He was cutting through Henderson Park because one of his routine collections had run late, and Simone preferred walking the 10 blocks home when business left him restless. The Christmas lights tangled through the bare branches should have softened the scene, but they only cast strange shadows that made the park feel emptier, the season just another backdrop to the machinery of survival and control that defined his life. That's when he heard it. "Sir?" The voice was small, uncertain, entirely out of place. Simone stopped, his hand instinctively moving toward his waist, before his mind caught up. He turned to find a boy near a snow-dusted bench, maybe 8 years old, maybe younger. The kid wore a denim jacket with a fleece collar that had seen better years, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. Beneath it, a lighter hoodie did almost nothing against the temperature. His dark hair was matted with melting snow, his face flushed red from cold, and his eyes, those eyes were what made Simone pause wide with fear, but fighting desperately to stay steady. "Yeah?" Simone approached slowly, scanning the area for whoever should be watching this kid. The park was empty, no mothers on phones, no fathers calling from warm cars. Just street lamps casting yellow pools on white snow, and the distant hum of traffic that felt a world away. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." The boy's voice cracked on the last word, and that's when Simone's gaze dropped to what the child was holding, a baby, wrapped in what looked like a knitted blanket with a pattern that had faded to almost nothing, completely inadequate for the temperature. The infant's cries were weak, barely audible over the wind, and Simone recognized that terrible quiet, the sound of a body shutting down, conserving what little energy remained. Her tiny face was mottled red and white, her miniature fists trembling as they emerged from the blanket. She couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 months old. Simone's jaw tightened. His pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the sharp focus that came before action. He was already unbuttoning his jacket, already kneeling in the snow beside the bench, ignoring how the cold soaked immediately through his jeans. "Where's your mother?" The question came out harder than he intended, but the boy didn't flinch. The child's brave expression shattered like glass. She left us here." His voice broke completely now, tears freezing on his cheeks before they could fall. "She said she had to handle something, that she'd be right back. She promised it wouldn't take long, but that was before it got dark. And I tried to keep her warm, but she won't stop crying, and I don't know what else to do." Simone was already moving, pulling his leather jacket off despite the cold that hit him like a physical blow. He wrapped it carefully around the baby, tucking the heavy material around her small body. The infant stirred slightly, her weak cries continuing, but she didn't have the strength to truly protest. "How long has she been like this?" Simone asked, his hands surprisingly gentle as he adjusted the makeshift wrap. "I don't know. An hour? Maybe 2? The boy's voice climbed with panic. "Is she going to die?" "Please, sir, I don't..." "She's not going to die." Simone's voice cut through the rising hysteria with absolute certainty. He pulled out his phone with one hand while cradling the baby against his chest with the other. "But we need to move fast." He pressed a single contact. The call connected on the first ring. "Boss?" "Henderson Park. East entrance by the old fountain." Now. Simone's voice was low, controlled, but carried an urgency his people would recognize immediately. Bring thermal blankets. Medical grade. And call Dr. Rothstein, tell him I'm bringing in an infant with possible hypothermia. I want him ready. On it. 5 minutes. Simone ended the call and looked back at the boy, who was staring up at him with desperate hope, fighting against learned disappointment. The expression of a child who'd been let down before, but couldn't help reaching for salvation anyway. What's your name? Justin, sir. Justin Brumfield. The boy wiped at his face with a threadbare sleeve. And that's my sister. She doesn't have a name yet. Mom said she wanted to wait until... His voice broke again. Okay, Justin. Listen to me very carefully. Simone shifted the baby slightly, feeling how cold she was even through his jacket. I need you to stay right here with me. Don't move. Don't run. My people are coming to help, and then we're going to get your sister somewhere warm. Understand? Justin nodded, his whole body trembling from cold and fear. Simone studied the child more carefully. The denim jacket was quality once, but worn threadbare now. The jeans had been patched at the knees. The shoes were too big, probably hand-me-downs or thrift store finds, but the kid was clean. His hair had been cut recently. Someone cared or had cared, until something went very wrong. Your mother, Simone said quietly, his voice losing its edge. Why did she leave you here? Justin hesitated, glancing away toward the dark tree line beyond the park. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. She owed people money. Bad people, she said. She told me she had to make it right tonight, that if she didn't... He stopped, his small face crumpling with the weight of adult fears no child should carry. She said we'd be safer here, that nobody would think to look for us in the park, that she'd be back before we got too cold. Something dark and dangerous flickered across Simone's expression. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, calm but carrying a promise of violence. Who did this to her? Who's she paying? I don't know, sir. She wouldn't say. She just kept crying and saying she was sorry, that she'd fix it. Justin looked up at him with those wide, terrified eyes. She's not a bad person. She's really not. She just things got hard after Dad left. And... I know. Simone cut him off gently, because he did know. He understood exactly how desperation worked, how it ground people down until they made choices that seemed impossible from any other vantage point. Your mother's not bad, Justin. She's scared. There's a difference. Headlights cut through the darkness, 2 black SUVs pulling up to the park entrance with practiced precision. Doors opened, and 3 men emerged dressed in dark coats, moving with purpose. Justin tensed, pressing closer to the bench. It's okay, Simone said. They're with me. They're here to help. One of the men jogged over with a thermal blanket, and Simone carefully transferred the baby into the warmer covering while keeping his jacket around her. The infant's cries were almost non-existent now, just small whimpers that made Simone's chest tighten. He stood, cradling the baby against him, and looked down at Justin. Come on, you're riding with me. Where are we going? Simone started walking toward the vehicles, Justin scrambling to keep up. Somewhere warm, he said. Somewhere safe, and then quietly more to himself than the boy. And then we're going to find your mother. The SUV's interior was warm enough to hurt. Justin climbed into the back seat, his movements stiff and cautious, like a wild animal accepting food from a stranger's hand, grateful but not yet trusting. Simone slid in beside him, the baby still bundled against his chest, and the door closed with a solid thunk that sealed them into a world of leather and heated air. Drive, Simone said to the man behind the wheel. Easy. No sirens, no attention. The vehicle pulled away from the park smoothly, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. In the front passenger seat, a broad-shouldered man with graying temples turned slightly. Doc Rothstein's waiting at the clinic on Maple. Says he'll have everything ready. Good. Simone adjusted the thermal blanket around the baby, checking her tiny face. The mottled coloring was beginning to fade slightly, but her eyes remained closed, her breathing shallow. Call ahead. Tell him we're 7 minutes out. And Jeffrey? Yeah, boss? Put the word out, quietly. I need to know who's running debt collection in the Henderson Park area. Small-time stuff, the kind that preys on single mothers. His voice remained calm, but Justin noticed how the men in the front seats sat up straighter, how the driver's hands tightened on the wheel. Consider it done. Simone looked down at Justin, who was staring at his sister with an expression that aged him beyond his years, the look of someone who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who understood loss before he understood algebra. When did you last eat? Simone asked. Justin blinked, pulled from wherever his mind had gone. I don't remember. This morning, maybe? Mom made oatmeal. Simone reached into the center console and pulled out a protein bar, unwrapping it one-handed before offering it to the boy. Eat. You can't help your sister if you collapse. Justin took it hesitantly, holding it without biting. Is she really going to be okay? The doctor will tell us for sure, Simone said, choosing honesty over empty comfort. But we got to her in time. You did the right thing, asking for help. I was scared. The confession came out small. Mom always said never to talk to strangers. But you walked by, and you looked, I don't know, like maybe you could do something. Justin's voice dropped to a whisper. Was I stupid? Mom says the city's dangerous, that people aren't always what they seem. Simone was quiet for a moment, studying this child who'd gambled everything on a stranger's face in the dark. Your mother's right about the city, but you weren't stupid, Justin. You were desperate. Sometimes that's the same as brave. The boy finally took a bite of the protein bar, chewing mechanically. What if she doesn't come back? Your mother? Justin nodded, not meeting Simone's eyes. What if those people, what if they hurt her? What if she can't come back? It was the question Simone had been turning over since they'd left the park. The one that explained why Justin had looked so terrified when Simone's men arrived. The boy wasn't just afraid for his sister. He was preparing himself to be an orphan. Then I'll find her, Simone said simply. That's a promise. But you don't even know us. Why would you? Because I'm here now. Simone shifted the baby slightly as she stirred, her small face scrunching. And because someone should have asked that question about you 2 hours ago, before your mother felt like her only option was leaving you in the snow. The SUV pulled up to a modest brick building with a discreet sign. Rothstein Medical. Private practice. The lights were on inside despite the late hour, and through the glass doors, Simone could see an older man in a white coat moving purposefully around an examination room. Stay close, Simone told Justin as they climbed out. Dr. Rothstein met them at the door, late 60s, silver-haired, with steady hands and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen everything twice. His eyes went immediately to the bundle in Simone's arms. Bring her straight back. How long was she exposed? 2 hours minimum, maybe longer. Simone followed him into the examination room, which had been set up with warming equipment and monitoring devices. The boy kept her wrapped, but the temperature dropped fast. Smart boy. Rothstein carefully took the baby, unwrapping the thermal blanket and Simone's jacket to assess her. He worked quickly, his movements efficient. Body temperature is low but not critical. No signs of frostbite. Respiratory rate is concerning but improving with the warmth. Justin stood in the doorway, frozen, watching his sister under the bright examination lights. She looked impossibly small on the table, her chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow movements. Is she going to die? The question came out raw. Rothstein glanced at him, his expression softening. No, son. She's going to be fine. Cold, uncomfortable, and probably hungry, but fine. You kept her alive until help came. That matters. Justin's knees buckled slightly, and Simone caught his shoulder, steadying him. The boy had been holding it together through sheer will, and now that will was crumbling. It's okay, Simone said quietly. You can let go now. Justin turned and buried his face against Simone's side, his small body shaking with sobs he'd been suppressing for hours. Simone stood there awkwardly for a moment. He wasn't built for this, didn't have the framework for comforting terrified children, but then his hand came up, resting on the boy's head. You did good, kid. You hear me? You did everything right. Jeffrey appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Boss? Got something. Simone looked down at Justin, who was still clinging to him. Dr. Rothstein, can you? I've got him. The doctor moved around the examination table, keeping one eye on the baby while addressing Justin. Son, why don't you come sit here where you can watch your sister? I'll get you some warm soup, and you can tell me all about how brave you were tonight. Justin pulled away reluctantly, wiping at his face. Simone waited until the boy was seated, his attention back on his sister, before stepping into the hallway with Jeffrey. Talk. Word came back fast. There's a crew working that neighborhood small operation. Nothing sophisticated. They target people who can't go to banks, can't ask for help. Immigrant families, single parents, people with records. Jeffrey's jaw tightened. They keep the amount small enough to avoid attention, but the interest is predatory. Compound it weekly until people can't breathe. The mother? Name's Ruth Brumfield. Borrowed money 8 months ago to cover medical bills when the baby was born premature. Started at $2,000. Now they're claiming she owes $12. Simone's expression went cold. Where do they operate? Warehouse district. East side, near the old cannery. Who runs it? Jeffrey hesitated. Guy named Gregor Kessler, mid-level operator. Not connected to anyone who matters, but thinks he's untouchable because he keeps things quiet. Simone was silent for a long moment, his mind working through calculations, consequences, and the careful balance of power that governed his world. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. It's me. I need a location on Ruth Brumfield. Last known whereabouts. Warehouse District East Side. He paused, listening. No, don't approach. Just find her and report back, and put together a team 4 men, light gear. We're going to have a conversation with someone. He ended the call and looked back through the examination room door. Justin was holding his sister's tiny hand, whispering something Simone couldn't hear. The baby's eyes were open now, dark and unfocused but alive. What are you thinking? Jeffrey asked carefully. Simone watched the boy and his sister for another moment, then turned away. I'm thinking, he said quietly, that fear travels downward, and someone needs to reverse the flow. The baby's name was Lily. Simone learned this an hour later when Dr. Rothstein finished his examination and declared her stable. Justin had whispered it while stroking his sister's tiny fingers, explaining that their mother had been saving the name for when they could afford the birth certificate paperwork. As if names cost money. As if bureaucracy cared about a 4-month-old infant who'd almost frozen to death in a park. She's going to need monitoring for the next few hours, Rothstein said, adjusting the warming blanket around Lily. But her core temperature is rising steadily. No signs of complications. You got to her in time. Justin hadn't left his sister's side, perched on a stool beside the examination table, with the kind of vigilance that suggested he'd been her primary caretaker for longer than just tonight. His eyes were red-rimmed from crying and exhaustion, but he refused to close them. Simone stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low enough not to disturb the children but sharp enough to convey urgency. What do you mean you can't find her? He turned slightly away, his jaw tightening. She's 1 woman in a 5-block radius. How hard can it be? The voice on the other end spoke rapidly, and Simone's expression darkened. Then expand the search. Check the hospitals, the precincts, anywhere someone might dump an unconscious woman without asking questions. He paused, listening. No, I want her found. Alive. Tonight. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring out at the dark street beyond the clinic. His reflection in the glass looked tired, not physically, but in some deeper way he couldn't quite name. How many years had he spent building walls between himself and moments like this? How long since he'd allowed himself to care about anything beyond the careful machinery of power and control? Sir? Simone turned to find Justin watching him with those 2 old eyes. Are they going to find my mom? Yes. The certainty in Simone's voice was absolute, even if the truth was messier. My people are good at what they do. What if she's... Justin couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't give voice to the fear that had been eating at him since sunset. Simone crossed the room and crouched beside the boy, putting them at eye level. Listen to me. Your mother made a choice tonight. A bad one, maybe, but she made it because she was trying to protect you. That kind of love doesn't just disappear. She's out there, and she's fighting to get back to you. How do you know? Because I've seen what happens when people give up. Simone's voice was quiet, honest. And leaving you in that park with instructions and a promise? That's not giving up. That's someone who fully intended to come back. Justin absorbed this, wanting desperately to believe. The men she went to see, the ones she owes money to, they're bad, aren't they? Yeah, Simone said, choosing truth over comfort. They are. Are they worse than you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Rothstein glanced up from his notes but said nothing. Jeffrey, standing guard near the door, remained perfectly still. Simone studied the boy's face, reading the intelligence there, the sharp awareness that came from growing up with too little and learning to read danger in order to survive. What makes you think I'm bad? Justin didn't flinch. The way those men listen to you, the way they move when you talk. My mom's boyfriend used to be like that, before he left. Said he worked collections for someone important. The boy's voice dropped. Are you important? In some circles. Simone tilted his head slightly. Does that scare you? No. Justin looked at his sister, sleeping peacefully now under the warm lights. You helped us. Bad people don't do that. Some bad people do exactly that, Simone said softly. The world's more complicated than bad and good, Justin. Most of us live somewhere in the middle, making choices we hope we can live with. Before Justin could respond, Simone's phone buzzed. He stood, checking the message, and his expression shifted, still controlled, but with an undercurrent of cold fury. "Jeffrey, with me." He looked at Dr. Rothstein. "Keep them here. Keep them safe. Nobody gets near these kids unless I clear them personally." "Understood." Rothstein moved closer to Justin, his presence reassuring. "Wait." Justin slid off his stool, crossing to Simone. "You're going to find her now, aren't you?" "Yes. Promise me," the boy's voice cracked. "Promise me you'll bring her back." Simone looked down at this child who'd already been betrayed by circumstances beyond his control, who was asking for a promise Simone had no business making. In his world, promises were leverage, tools to be used and discarded. But standing here, looking into Justin's desperate eyes, he found himself saying something he'd regret if it turned out to be a lie. "I promise. I'll bring her back to you." Justin nodded, accepting this covenant, and returned to his sister's side. The SUV cut through empty streets, heading east toward the warehouse district. Jeffrey drove while Simone stared at the message on his phone, reading it for the third time. "Found her. Warehouse on Fletcher Street. Alive but hurt. Kessler's still there with 3 men, waiting for your call." "What's the play?" Jeffrey asked, his eyes on the road. "We go in quiet. No guns unless absolutely necessary. I want Kessler and his people contained, not dead." Simone's voice was cold, controlled. "This isn't about sending a message to the city. It's about correcting a mistake." "A mistake?" Someone thought they could squeeze a desperate woman hard enough to profit from her fear. Someone thought that children were acceptable collateral damage in a business transaction. Simone's hands tightened into fists. "That was a miscalculation. I'm going to make sure everyone understands that." Jeffrey navigated through an intersection, the warehouses rising around them like tombstones. "Boss, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Why this one? Why these kids?" Jeffrey's tone was careful, respectful. "We've passed 100 situations like this. You've always said we can't save everyone, that getting involved in civilian problems complicates the business." Simone was quiet for a long moment, watching the city slide past the windows. "I don't know," he finally said, and it was the truth. "Maybe I'm tired, Jeffrey. Tired of walking past the consequences without acknowledging them. Or maybe you saw yourself in that kid." Simone turned to look at his lieutenant, surprised. Jeffrey shrugged. "I've worked for you 8 years, boss. I know your story. The things you don't talk about. That boy, sitting in the cold, holding his sister, trying to be brave enough to keep them both alive. That could have been you once. It could have been. Before the Caruso name meant anything, before power and reputation, there had been a different Simone, young, afraid, desperate. He'd buried that version of himself so deep he'd almost forgotten it existed. Almost. The warehouse appeared ahead, a squat concrete structure with broken windows and rusted loading docks. 2 black vehicles were already parked in the shadows, and Simone could see his men positioned strategically around the building. "She's inside?" Simone asked, checking his phone. "2nd floor, northwest corner. Kessler and his crew are in the main floor office." Simone opened his door before the SUV fully stopped. "Separate the mother from Kessler's operation. Get her medical attention if she needs it. Then bring Kessler to me. And if he resists?" Simone's expression was arctic. "Then make sure he understands that resistance has consequences." He started toward the warehouse, his footsteps crunching on broken asphalt. And for the first time in years, Simone Caruso wasn't thinking about territory or profit or the careful balance of power that governed his world. He was thinking about a promise he'd made to a terrified 8-year-old boy, and he intended to keep it. The warehouse smelled like rust and old concrete, decades of industrial decay settling into the walls like a sickness. Simone moved through the ground floor with practiced silence, his men falling into formation around him without needing orders. They'd done this dance before the calculated approach, the controlled escalation, the moment when authority became absolute. But tonight felt different. Tonight wasn't about territory or respect or the invisible lines that governed his world. Tonight was about a woman who'd made a desperate choice and 2 children waiting in a clinic, believing he could fix what seemed irreparable. One of his men, a lean figure named Torres, appeared from the shadows and fell into step beside him. "She's upstairs, conscious but shaken. No serious injuries, but Kessler roughed her up pretty good before we arrived." Torres's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Boss, she's terrified. Keeps asking about her kids. Anyone tell her they're safe? Figured you'd want to do that yourself." Simone nodded, filing that away. "And Kessler? Main office, straight ahead. 3 men with him, but they're low level." The kind who fold when real pressure shows up. Torres gestured toward a door with frosted glass, light bleeding around its edges. They don't know we're here yet. Been too busy celebrating. Celebrating what? Torres's expression darkened. The money they squeezed out of Ruth Brumfield tonight. Apparently, she showed up with everything she had, $600, and they laughed at her, told her the debt had gone up to $15,000. When she tried to leave, they stopped her. Simone felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest, not rage, but something more dangerous, calculated fury. The kind that didn't explode, but instead carved through obstacles with surgical precision. How many exits? 2. Back door and the one we're standing near. Both covered. Good. Give me 5 minutes with Kessler alone. If you hear anything that sounds like a situation, come in. Otherwise, wait. Torres hesitated. Boss, you sure you don't want backup in there? Simone's expression was answer enough. He approached the office door and opened it without knocking. 4 men looked up from a scratched metal desk scattered with cash and papers. The office was claustrophobic. Bare bulbs casting harsh shadows, walls covered in water stains and old calendars. A space heater hummed in the corner, fighting against the December cold. Gregor Kessler sat behind the desk, a man in his 40s with thinning hair and the kind of soft physique that suggested he'd never done physical work himself. His eyes widened when Simone walked in, recognition flickering across his face like static. Who the? Kessler started, but his voice died when his gaze locked on Simone's face. Whatever he saw there made him recalculate instantly. The 3 men flanking Kessler were younger, harder around the edges, the muscle behind the operation. They straightened slightly, hands moving toward their waistbands. Don't. Simone's voice was quiet, conversational even, but it carried a weight that froze all 3 men mid-motion. Whatever you're reaching for, I promise you don't want to find out what happens next. Do you have any idea whose territory you just walked into? Kessler tried to inject authority into his voice, but it came out thin, uncertain. Simone closed the door behind him and stood there, taking up space with the kind of presence that made the cramped office feel even smaller. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't make threats, just stood there, and somehow that was more intimidating than any show of force. Your territory? Simone tilted his head slightly. That's interesting. See, I was under the impression this entire district operated under certain understandings, rules about who works where, permissions that need to be secured before setting up operations. Kessler's face paled slightly. Look, if there was some misunderstanding about clearances, I'm sure we can work something out. We're reasonable people here. Reasonable. Simone repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. Tell me, Gregor, can I call you Gregor? What's reasonable about charging a single mother $15,000 on a $2,000 loan? That's just business. Interest compounds, payments were missed, penalties. What's reasonable? Simone continued, his voice dropping lower. About leaving 2 children in a park? One of them an infant. In December, for hours. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Kessler's 3 men exchanged glances, suddenly uncertain about whose side they wanted to be on. I don't know what you're talking about, Kessler said, but his hands were trembling slightly as he shuffled papers on his desk. We run a lending service. What our clients do with their personal lives isn't our concern. Ruth Brumfield came here tonight. It wasn't a question. Ruth Brumfield came here tonight with $600, trying to pay down a debt she never should have owed in the first place. You told her it wasn't enough. When she tried to leave, you stopped her. Simone took a single step forward. Her children sat in the snow for 2 hours, waiting for her to come back. Her baby daughter almost died from hypothermia. Kessler's face shifted through several expressions: confusion, calculation, and finally a kind of desperate defiance. Look, I don't know who you are, but you can't just walk in here and... Simone Caruso. The name hit like a physical blow. Kessler's mouth snapped shut, and his 3 men took simultaneous steps backward, suddenly very interested in being anywhere else. Oh, Jesus. Kessler's voice came out strangled. Mr. Caruso, I swear. I didn't know we didn't mean it's just business. We never intended. You never intended for consequences to reach you. Simone moved closer to the desk, and Kessler's chair scraped backward. That's the problem with men like you, Gregor. You make choices as if the world exists in a vacuum, as if squeezing desperate people has no ripple effects beyond your profit margin. Please. Kessler's hands came up, placating. Whatever this is about, we can make it right. The debt will forgive it. The woman, Mrs. Brumfield, she can go. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. Simone smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's generous of you. One of Kessler's men, braver or dumber than the others, spoke up. Mr. Caruso, with all respect, we're just trying to make a living here. Maybe we got a little aggressive with collections, but… A little aggressive? Simone's gaze shifted to him, and the man physically flinched. A 4-month-old infant nearly died tonight. A 8-year-old boy sat in the snow, holding his sister, terrified she'd stop breathing. He had to approach a complete stranger and beg for help because his mother was here, being collected from by you people. The office was completely silent except for the space heater's hum. Where is she? Simone asked quietly. Ruth Brumfield. Where is she right now? Upstairs, Kessler whispered. Storage room. We were holding her until she could call someone to bring more money. That's all. That's all. Simone nodded slowly. You kidnapped a woman, assaulted her, left her children to freeze, all over $2,000. $15,000. $2,000. Simone's voice cut like a blade. The rest is fabricated interest designed to trap people in cycles they can't escape. And you're going to forgive all of it, not just Ruth's debt. Every debt you're holding over every desperate person in this district. Kessler's eyes widened. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Years of work. I don't care. Simone leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. You're done, Gregor. Done with this warehouse. Done with predatory lending. Done operating in this city. You have 48 hours to close your operation and disappear. If I hear you've opened somewhere else, if I hear you've collected one more payment from anyone, I'll personally ensure you understand what real consequences look like. You can't just… I can. Simone straightened. Because unlike you, I understand that power comes with responsibility. And right now, I'm responsible for making sure 2 children get their mother back. He turned toward the door, then paused. The money on your desk? That belongs to Ruth Brumfield. All of it. You'll give it to her with an apology before she leaves. Kessler started to protest, but something in Simone's expression made the words die in his throat. Simone opened the door to find Torres and 3 other men waiting. Escort Mr. Kessler and his associates out. Make sure they understand the timeline. 48 hours. Then he headed for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, because somewhere above him, a terrified mother was waiting. And Simone Caruso had a promise to keep. The storage room was on the 2nd floor, tucked at the end of a hallway lined with abandoned equipment and shadows. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting everything in unstable yellow light. One of Simone's men stood guard outside the door, a younger operative named Rico who straightened immediately when Simone approached. She's inside, boss. Hasn't said much. Keeps asking about her kids, but she's too scared to believe anything we tell her. She hurt? Bruised face, split lip, possible cracked ribs from how she's moving. Rico's jaw tightened. They worked her over pretty good. Simone felt that cold fury settle deeper in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. Anyone touch her after we arrived? Not a finger. Torres made it clear what would happen if anyone tried. Good. Simone reached for the door handle, then paused. Rico, call Dr. Rothstein. Tell him we're bringing in a 2nd patient. Have him prepare for possible broken ribs and shock. On it. Simone opened the door slowly, announcing his presence before he could startle her. Ruth Brumfield sat on an overturned crate in the corner, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold the pieces together. She looked up sharply when the door opened, and Simone saw the same terrified determination he'd seen in Justin's eyes, the look of someone who'd already lost everything and was preparing to lose more. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her left eye was swelling shut, an ugly purple bruise spreading across her cheekbone. Blood had dried at the corner of her mouth. She wore a thin sweater and jeans, practical clothes for someone who couldn't afford to worry about fashion. And her hands, Simone noticed her hands immediately were scraped raw across the knuckles. She'd fought back. Mrs. Brumfield. Simone kept his distance, staying near the door. My name is Simone Caruso. I'm here to take you to your children. Ruth's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she might bolt. My children? Where are they? What did you do to… Her voice cracked, pain and terror bleeding through. Please, they're just babies. They didn't do anything wrong. If you want to hurt someone, hurt me. But please, they're safe. Simone kept his voice steady, calm. They're with a doctor right now. Your son Justin and your daughter Lily, they're both safe. Lily? Ruth's face crumpled. You know her name? How do you… She stood abruptly, swaying slightly from pain or shock or both. I need to see them. Right now, I need. And you will. Simone took a careful step forward, hands visible, non-threatening. But first, I need you to listen to me. Can you do that? Ruth's breathing was ragged, panicked. Her eyes darted around the room like she was looking for exits, for weapons, for anything that might help her protect children who weren't even there. Who are you? Why do you have my babies? I found them. Simone's voice gentled slightly. About 2 hours ago, Justin was sitting on a bench in Henderson Park, holding Lily. She was crying, and he was trying to keep her warm. He asked me for help. The words hit Ruth like physical blows. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling over despite obvious efforts to contain them. Oh God, no. I told him to wait. I said I'd be right back. I promised. Her knees buckled, and Simone moved quickly, catching her before she hit the concrete floor. Easy, you're hurt. He helped her back to the crate, and she didn't resist, all the fight draining out of her at once. Are they really okay? Her voice was barely a whisper. My baby Lily, she was so cold when I left. I wrapped her in every blanket I had, but it wasn't enough. And Justin kept saying she wouldn't stop crying, but I had to come here. I had to make this right. She looked up at Simone, her good eye pleading. They told me if I didn't pay tonight, they'd come to my apartment. They'd take everything. I couldn't let them see that. Couldn't let them hurt my children. So you left Justin and Lily in the park. Simone said it without judgment, just stating fact. Ruth flinched anyway. I thought they'd be safer there. Away from here. Away from these people. Her voice broke. I thought I'd be back in 30 minutes. I had $600, everything I'd saved. I thought maybe if I gave them that, if I explained my situation, they'd give me more time. She laughed, a bitter sound. I was so stupid. You weren't stupid. Simone crouched beside her, meeting her eyes. You were desperate. There's a difference. Is there? Ruth touched her split lip gingerly. I left my children in the snow. What kind of mother does that? What kind of person? The kind who's been backed into a corner by predators. Simone's voice hardened. The kind who's been systematically exploited by people who profit from fear. You made a choice based on impossible options, Ruth. That doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you a victim of a system designed to crush people exactly like you. She stared at him, trying to reconcile his words with everything she knew about men who operated in warehouses and spoke with authority. Why are you helping us? People like you don't just... She stopped, uncertain. People like me? Powerful people, dangerous people. She gestured vaguely at the room, at the situation. You walk in here, and everyone stops. They're terrified of you. I can see it, so why would someone like you care about us? It was a fair question. One Simone had been asking himself since he'd knelt in the snow beside a terrified 8-year-old. Because I found your son holding your daughter, trying to be brave when he was absolutely terrified. Because your baby almost died tonight from hypothermia. Because... He paused, choosing honesty. Because I'm tired of watching fear flow downhill until it crushes the people who can least afford to bear it. Ruth absorbed this, tears still streaming down her face. Justin, is he really okay? He must have been so scared. And Lily, if she got too cold, if she... Dr. Rothstein says Lily's going to be fine. Her temperature dropped dangerously low, but we got to her in time. Justin never left her side. That boy loves his sister more than anything in this world. A sob broke through Ruth's control. He shouldn't have had to do that. He's 8 years old. He should be worrying about homework and friends, not whether his baby sister is going to survive the night. You're right. He shouldn't. Simone stood, offering her his hand. Which is why we're going to make sure he never has to again. Come on, your children are waiting. Ruth took his hand, letting him help her up. She moved carefully, one arm pressed against her ribs. The debt, Kessler said, I owe $15,000 now. He said if I don't pay, the debt is forgiven. Simone said it like it was already done, already immutable. All of it. You don't owe anyone anything, but that's not people like Kessler don't just forgive. Kessler doesn't have a choice. Simone opened the door, nodding to Rico. He's closing his operation, permanently. You'll never hear from him again. Ruth stared at him like he'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. What did you do? I had a conversation. Explained certain realities about how business operates in this city. Simone's expression was unreadable. Sometimes people need reminders about consequences. They started down the hallway, Ruth moving slowly, still processing everything. At the top of the stairs, she stopped suddenly, turning to face him. "Mr. Caruso, that's your name, right?" "Simone." "Simone." She said it carefully, like testing the weight of it. "I don't know what you are or what you do, and maybe I don't want to know, but thank you." Her voice cracked again. "Thank you for saving my children." Simone looked at this woman who'd been beaten and threatened, who'd made terrible choices out of desperate love, who was still standing despite everything trying to knock her down. "Thank your son," he said quietly. "He's the one who was brave enough to ask for help." They descended the stairs together, Ruth leaning slightly on the railing for support. And somewhere ahead, in a warm clinic under bright lights, 2 children were waiting for their mother to come home. The SUV moved through the city with deliberate care, avoiding potholes and sudden stops. Ruth sat in the back seat beside Simone, her hands twisted together in her lap, knuckles white with tension. Every few seconds, she'd glance out the window as if trying to calculate how much longer until she could hold her children again. "How far?" she asked for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "5 more blocks." Simone's voice remained patient. He'd watched her cycle through this pattern since they'd left the warehouse, brief silence followed by desperate questions, as if asking could somehow make the distance shorter. Ruth nodded, then immediately asked, "And you're sure they're okay? Both of them?" "Dr. Rothstein called 20 minutes ago. Lily's temperature is normal. She's sleeping. Justin ate some soup and is sitting beside her." Simone showed her his phone screen, though she'd already seen the update twice. "They're fine, Ruth, I promise." "He shouldn't have eaten," Ruth's voice caught. "Justin, he has a sensitive stomach when he's stressed. If he ate too fast, he'll get sick. And," she pressed her hands to her face, "God, listen to me. My son kept his baby sister alive in the snow, and I'm worried about soup." "You're worried because you're their mother." Simone said it simply, without judgment. "That's what mothers do." Ruth lowered her hands, looking at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Do you have children?" "No." "Then how do you know?" Simone was quiet for a moment, watching the city lights slide past the window. "I had a mother once. She worried about everything. Whether I'd eaten, whether I was warm enough, whether I was safe." His voice went distant. "Even when we had nothing, she worried. Especially then. What happened to her?" "She died. A long time ago." Simone turned back to Ruth. "But I remember how she'd look at me when I came home, like she'd been holding her breath until she could see I was okay. That's the same look you have right now." Ruth's chin trembled. "I failed them tonight. I know you're being kind, saying I made a desperate choice. But the truth is, I left my babies in the cold. What if you hadn't walked by? What if Justin had been too scared to ask for help? What if—" Her breath hitched. "What if Lily had died because I was too proud to ask for help before it got this bad? But she didn't." Simone's voice was firm, cutting through her spiral. "You're not responsible for Kessler's predatory business. You're not responsible for a system designed to trap people like you. You did what you thought would protect your children, and I almost killed them." "No, you almost saved them." Simone shifted to face her fully. "Ruth, listen to me. You borrowed money when your daughter was in the hospital. You worked 3 jobs trying to pay it back. When they threatened to come to your home, you went to them instead. Every choice you made was about protecting Justin and Lily. The fact that it went wrong doesn't change the intention behind it. Intention doesn't matter if they end up dead." "But they're not dead." Simone's voice softened. "They're waiting for you. And when you see them, you're not going to apologize for being a bad mother. You're going to hold them and be grateful you all survived. Understood?" Ruth stared at him, tears streaming freely now. "How are you so calm about this? How do you just fix things like they're simple?" "They're not simple. Nothing about tonight is simple." Simone glanced at Jeffrey driving, then back to Ruth. "But falling apart doesn't help your children. Moving forward does." The SUV turned onto Maple Street, and Ruth sat up straighter, recognizing the area. "That's it, isn't it? That building? That's Rothstein's clinic." Ruth's breathing quickened, her hands trembling harder. What if they won't forgive me? What if Justin?" Her voice broke completely. "What if he looks at me and realizes I'm not someone he can trust? He's 8 years old, and he loves you." Simone said it with absolute certainty. "Children that age don't calculate risk and betrayal. They just want their mother. You don't know that. I watched him tonight. The whole time we were getting Lily warm, the whole time the doctor was examining her, Justin kept asking when you'd come back. Not if when. He never doubted you'd return. Simone's expression gentled. That's not fear, Ruth. That's faith. The SUV pulled to a stop in front of the clinic, and Ruth froze, staring at the lit windows like they were a threshold she couldn't cross. What if I can't do this? She whispered. What if I can't be what they need? You already are what they need. Simone opened his door, then moved around to her side, offering his hand. Come on. They've waited long enough. Ruth took his hand, letting him help her from the vehicle. She moved slowly, pain from her ribs making her wince, but she didn't stop. 3 steps toward the clinic entrance, then 5, then 10. Each one seemed to cost her something. At the door, she hesitated again. Through the glass, she could see down the hallway to the examination room, could see Justin's small figure perched on a stool, his back to them, shoulders hunched forward. He looks so small, Ruth breathed. When did he get so small? He's not small. He's 8. Simone held the door open. And he's been carrying weight no child should have to carry. So maybe it's time someone else carried it for a while. Ruth looked at him, searching his face. Why are you doing this? Really? People don't just save strangers. There has to be a reason. Simone thought about that park bench, about a child's voice cutting through his carefully constructed isolation, about the moment when calculation had given way to something more fundamental than power or control. Maybe I needed saving too, he said quietly, just in a different way. Before Ruth could respond, the clinic door opened from the inside. Dr. Rothstein stood there, his expression warm but professional. Mrs. Brumfield, your children are stable and asking for you. He stepped aside. They're right down the hall. Ruth took one shaking breath, then another. She pressed a hand to her bruised ribs, steadying herself, and then she was moving slowly at first, then faster, pain forgotten as she crossed the threshold into the hallway. Justin heard the footsteps. He turned on his stool, his young face exhausted and tear-stained, and his eyes went wide when he saw his mother. Mom? The word came out small, disbelieving, like he'd been afraid to hope. Ruth's face crumpled completely. Baby, oh baby, I'm so sorry. Justin launched himself off the stool and ran. Not away, but toward crashing into his mother with enough force to make her stumble backward. She caught him, crying out slightly from the pain in her ribs, but her arms wrapped around him immediately, holding him like she'd never let go. You came back, Justin sobbed into her shoulder. You came back. You came back. I promised, didn't I? Ruth's voice was barely audible through her tears. I promised I'd come back. I thought I was scared they hurt you. I thought maybe you couldn't. I'm here. I'm here now. Ruth pulled back just enough to see his face, her hands cupping his cheeks. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Mom. I kept Lily warm. I did like you said. Justin's words tumbled out frantically. But she got so cold. And I didn't know what to do. And then Mr. Caruso found us and he helped and he turned, pointing toward the examination table. Lily's okay? The doctor said she's okay? Ruth looked past Justin to where her daughter lay sleeping under warming blankets, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. The sight broke something open inside her, relief so profound it was almost painful. She moved to the examination table, still holding Justin's hand, and gently touched Lily's small face. The baby stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open, unfocused but alive. Hi, sweetheart, Ruth whispered, tears dripping onto the table. Mommy's here. Mommy's so sorry. Behind them, Simone stood in the doorway with Dr. Rothstein. Watching this reunion he'd promised would happen, Jeffrey stood nearby, looking uncomfortable with the raw emotion, but making no move to leave. Thank you, Ruth said without turning around. Mr. Caruso, thank you for bringing me back to them. Simone didn't respond immediately. He just watched this family broken, bruised, but together and felt something shift in his chest. Something he couldn't quite name but recognized as important. You would have found your way back eventually, he finally said. Ruth turned to face him. Justin still pressed against her side. No, I wouldn't have. They would have kept me there, or worse. You saved all 3 of us tonight. Justin pulled away from his mother and crossed to Simone, looking up at him with those serious, too old eyes. You kept your promise, the boy said. You said you'd bring her back, and you did. Simone crouched down to Justin's level. Yeah, I did. Does that mean... Justin hesitated. Does that mean we're safe now? All of us? Simone looked at this child who'd been forced to be brave beyond his years, who'd carried responsibility that should have crushed him and made a decision that surprised even himself. "Yeah, kid, you're safe now." Dr. Rothstein cleared his throat gently, breaking the spell of the reunion. "Mrs. Brumfield, I'd like to examine you as well. Those injuries need attention." Ruth shook her head immediately, her hand still resting on Lily's sleeping form. "I'm fine. My children need. Your children need their mother healthy." Rothstein's tone was kind but firm. "And from what I can see, you're favoring your left side significantly. Possible cracked ribs, significant facial trauma. 5 minutes for an examination, then you can stay with them all night if you'd like." Ruth looked torn, her gaze moving between her sleeping daughter and her son, who still stood near Simone. The maternal instinct to never let them out of her sight again warred with the practical reality that she was hurt. "I'll stay with them," Simone said quietly. "They won't be alone." Justin nodded eagerly. "It's okay, Mom. Mr. Caruso promised to keep us safe. He keeps his promises." The simple faith in those words seemed to decide it for Ruth. She nodded reluctantly, letting Rothstein guide her toward a second examination room across the hall. But she stopped at the doorway, looking back at her children one more time, as if needing visual confirmation they were real. "I'll be right there," she said. "Right across the hall. If you need me, we'll get you," Simone assured her. "Go." When Ruth disappeared into the examination room, Justin returned to his stool beside Lily's table, resuming his vigil. The boy moved with the careful exhaustion of someone running on fumes, his small body finally beginning to acknowledge the trauma of the past few hours. Simone pulled up a chair and sat, stretching his legs out. His leather jacket, the one he'd wrapped around Lily, lay folded on a nearby counter. His black t-shirt and jeans made him look less imposing somehow, more human, though the tattoos visible on his forearms still told stories of a different life. "You should rest," Simone said, watching Justin fight to keep his eyes open. "Can't. Have to watch Lily." The boy's words slurred slightly with fatigue. "She needs someone watching. I'll watch her." Justin turned to look at him, considering this. "You promise?" "I promise." The boy was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on the edge of Lily's blanket. "Why did you help us? Mom says people don't usually help without wanting something back." Simone leaned back in his chair, studying this child who asked questions most adults wouldn't dare. "Your mother's not wrong. Most people operate on transactions, this for that, favor for favor. But you didn't ask for anything." "No, I didn't. So why?" Justin persisted, his young face serious. "Mom says nothing's free. She says there's always a cost, even if you can't see it." Simone was quiet, weighing how much truth an 8-year-old could handle. "Sometimes the cost is just being human when you've forgotten how. You asked for help when you needed it. I gave it. That's not a transaction, Justin. That's just..." He paused, searching for the right word. "That's just what should happen." Justin absorbed this, processing it against everything he'd learned growing up in a world where help always came with strings attached. "Are you a good person or a bad person?" "You asked me that before. You didn't really answer." Simone smiled slightly. "What do you think?" "I think..." Justin looked at his sleeping sister, then back at Simone. "I think you're scary. The way people react to you, the way they move when you talk. But you were gentle with Lily, and you kept your promise about Mom." He tilted his head, considering. "So maybe you're both? Good and bad at the same time? That's probably the most accurate assessment anyone's ever made of me." Simone's expression softened. "The world isn't simple, kid. Most people live in the gray spaces between good and bad, making choices they hope they can live with. Is that what you do? Make choices you can live with?" "I try to." Simone glanced toward the examination room where Ruth was. "Though tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the first good choice I've made in a long time." Justin was quiet for a moment, his eyes growing heavier. "Will those men come back? The ones who hurt Mom?" "No." "How do you know?" "Because I made it very clear what would happen if they did." Simone's voice carried absolute certainty. "They won't bother your family again. That's a promise I can keep. Because you're scary to them. Because I'm scarier than they are? Yes." Justin nodded slowly, accepting this logic. "Good. Someone should be scarier than the bad people. Otherwise, the bad people always win." From the mouths of children, Simone thought. This 8-year-old understood power dynamics better than most adults. Across the hall, they could hear Dr. Rothstein's voice, low and professional, and Ruth's occasional sharp intake of breath as he examined her injuries. Justin tensed at each sound, his protective instincts flaring. She's going to be okay, Simone said quietly. Bruised, sore, but okay. They hit her. Justin's voice was small, angry. I heard her scream when we were in the park, before it got dark. It was far away, but I knew it was her. I wanted to run and find her, but she told me to stay with Lily no matter what, so I did. His hands clenched into small fists. I stayed, and they hurt her, and I just sat there. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Simone leaned forward, capturing Justin's attention. Your mother told you to protect your sister, and that's what you did. If you'd left Lily alone, she would have died. You understand that? You saved her life by staying. But Mom, your mother is an adult who made a choice to face those men. You're a child who followed her instructions and kept your baby sister alive in sub-zero temperatures. One of those things is harder than the other, Justin. And you did the harder thing. Justin's eyes filled with tears he'd been holding back for hours. I was so scared. The whole time, I was so scared. I know. Lily kept crying, and she got quieter, and I didn't know if that meant she was getting better or worse. And it got dark, and the cold hurt, and I thought, his voice broke. I thought maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I was supposed to carry her somewhere warmer, or maybe I was supposed to find help sooner, or maybe, come here. Simone opened his arms, and Justin slid off his stool, collapsing against him. The boy cried silently, his small body shaking with suppressed sobs, and Simone held him the way someone had held him once, a lifetime ago, firmly, safely, letting him know he wasn't alone. You did good, kid, Simone said quietly. You did everything right. You kept your sister warm. You asked for help when you needed it. You were brave when you were terrified. That's not wrong. That's the definition of courage. Justin clung to him, crying harder, releasing hours of accumulated fear and responsibility. Across the room, Lily stirred slightly, making small sounds, and Justin pulled back immediately, wiping at his face. She's okay, Simone assured him. Just dreaming. They watched the baby together. This infant who had no idea how close she'd come to dying, how many lives had shifted course to save her. The examination room door opened, and Ruth emerged with Dr. Rothstein. She moved stiffly, white bandages visible under her sweater now, her face cleaned up but showing the full extent of the bruising. Her gaze found her children immediately, relief washing over her features. 2 cracked ribs, significant soft tissue damage, mild concussion, Rothstein reported quietly to Simone. She needs rest and pain management, but she'll heal. Ruth crossed to Justin, who met her halfway. They embraced carefully, mindful of her injuries. And this time there was no crying, just quiet holding, the kind that didn't need words. I'm sorry, Ruth whispered into Justin's hair. I'm so sorry, baby. You came back, Justin said simply. That's what matters. Ruth looked over Justin's head at Simone, her expression complex gratitude, confusion, and something that might have been awe. Mr. Caruso, I don't know how to what you've done tonight. You don't need to say anything. Simone stood, giving them space. You need to focus on healing. All 3 of you. But we should talk about what happens next. Where we go. How we... Ruth's voice climbed with anxiety. The apartment. I'm behind on rent. And if Kessler's operation knows where we live, it's handled. Ruth blinked. What? Your rent is current. I've already arranged it. Simone said it casually, like it was nothing. And Kessler's operation is closed. No one will come looking for you. You can't just... That's thousands of dollars. I can't accept. You're not accepting charity. You're accepting help. Simone's voice was firm but not unkind. There's a difference. Your job right now is to recover and take care of your children. Everything else is handled. Ruth stared at him, tears streaming down her face again. Why? Why would you do this for strangers? Simone looked at Justin, then at baby Lily sleeping peacefully, then back at Ruth. Because tonight, I remembered something I'd forgotten, he said quietly. That power without responsibility just creates more victims, and I'm tired of walking past the consequences. The clinic had grown quiet, the chaos of emergency giving way to the steady rhythm of recovery. Ruth sat beside Lily's examination table, her hand resting protectively on her daughter's small chest, feeling each breath like a miracle. Justin had finally surrendered to exhaustion, curled up on a padded bench with a blanket Dr. Rothstein had provided, his face peaceful in sleep. Simone stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but commanding. Ruth caught fragments of the conversation, instructions about operations, territories, restructuring, the language of power spoken in careful codes. When he ended the call, she spoke quietly, careful not to wake Justin. What you said before, about power and responsibility, Ruth adjusted Lily's blanket with tender precision. Did you mean it? Or was it just something to say to make me feel better? Simone turned from the window, studying her in the dim light. I meant it. Then what happens now? You go back to your life, and we go back to ours? We pretend tonight never happened? Do you want to pretend it never happened? Ruth looked at her children, Justin, sleeping the sleep of the truly exhausted, Lily breathing steadily under warm blankets. I want to understand what tonight changed. Because something did change. I can feel it. Simone crossed the room, pulling up the chair he'd occupied earlier. I've spent 10 years building something most people fear. Control, influence, the kind of power that opens doors and closes mouths. But tonight, standing in that park with your son, I realized something. What? That all of it, every calculated move, every strategic decision, it's meaningless if it just perpetuates the same cycles of fear I grew up in. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Your situation with Kessler? That exists because people like me allow it to exist. We control territories, we regulate operations, but we look away from the small predators because they're not our problem. Until they are. Ruth absorbed this, seeing past the dangerous exterior to something more complicated underneath. So what are you going to do? Change the rules. Simone's voice carried quiet conviction. No more operations that target desperate families. No more pressure that forces mothers to choose between their dignity and their children's safety. The people who work under my influence, they're going to understand that some lines don't get crossed. And if they refuse, then they'll find out what happens when you mistake my tolerance for weakness. Ruth smiled slightly despite everything. You're terrifying, you know that? Good. Fear has its uses. Simone glanced at Justin's sleeping form. But it shouldn't flow downward. It should protect, not crush. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people from different worlds connected by a snowy park bench and a child's desperate plea. What you did tonight, Ruth said softly. Paying my rent, closing Kessler's operation, bringing me back to my children. That's not just changing rules. That's changing who you are. Maybe. Simone stood, stretching slightly. Or maybe it's remembering who I was before I forgot. Dr. Rothstein appeared in the doorway, carrying paperwork. Mrs. Brumfield, I'm discharging Lily. Her vitals are excellent, and she'll be more comfortable at home. I want to see her in 3 days for a follow-up, but she's out of danger. Ruth's relief was visible, her shoulders dropping as tension she'd been carrying finally released. Thank you so much. Thank Mr. Caruso. He's covering all medical expenses. Rothstein handed her the discharge papers. And he's arranged transportation home for your family. Ruth looked at Simone, shaking her head slightly. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You won't. Simone's voice was gentle but firm. You'll take your children home, you'll heal, and you'll build a life where tonight becomes a bad memory, not a defining tragedy. That's payment enough. Justin stirred on the bench, his eyes opening slowly. He sat up, disoriented for a moment, then focused on his mother and sister. Is it morning? Almost, baby. Ruth moved to him, kissing his forehead. We're going home. Justin looked at Simone. All of us, all of you, Simone confirmed. Together, and in that moment, standing in a quiet clinic as dawn approached, Simone Caruso understood what power was really for. The SUV pulled up to a modest apartment building in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. The pre-dawn darkness was beginning to soften, the first hints of gray light touching the horizon. Jeffrey killed the engine, and for a moment, they all just sat there, Ruth in the passenger seat, Justin and Lily in the back with Simone. Home, Justin whispered, staring up at the building like he hadn't been sure he'd see it again. Simone helped Ruth from the vehicle, then carefully lifted the car seat containing sleeping Lily. Justin scrambled out, staying close to his mother, his small hand gripping her jacket. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, and they climbed slowly, Ruth's injuries making each step a challenge. When she unlocked the door, Simone saw what she'd been protecting, a small 2-bedroom space that was worn but clean, toys organized in a corner, children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the evidence of love operating on a shoestring budget. You can put her there. Ruth gestured to a bassinet in the living room. Simone set the car seat down gently, and Lily stirred but didn't wake. Justin stood in the doorway of his room, looking around like he was cataloging everything, making sure it was all still there. Mr. Caruso? Justin's voice was quiet. Will we see you again? It was the question Simone had been asking himself during the drive. The logical answer was, no, his work was done, the crisis resolved, the family safe. He should walk away, return to his world of calculated control and strategic distance. But looking at this boy who'd been forced to be brave beyond his years, Simone found himself saying something different. Yeah, kid, you'll see me again. Justin smiled, the first real smile Simone had seen from him. Good, because someone has to make sure the scary people stay away. That's the job, Simone agreed. Ruth walked him to the door, her movements careful. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. Then don't say it. Simone paused in the doorway. Just take care of your kids. That's what matters. I will. Ruth's voice was firm, certain. I promise I will. Simone nodded and started down the stairs. Behind him, he heard the door close, the multiple locks engaging sounds of a family securing themselves for sleep. In the SUV, Jeffrey glanced at him. Home, boss? Simone was quiet for a moment, staring at the building where 3 people were learning to feel safe again. Yeah. Home. They drove through the awakening city, and Simone felt the weight of the night settling on him, not with exhaustion, but with something else. Clarity, maybe. Purpose. His phone buzzed with messages, his organization continuing its operations, requiring decisions and attention. But for once, the machinery of power felt less important than what he'd just witnessed. A family reunited, a child sleeping peacefully, a mother who could finally breathe. Jeffrey, Simone said quietly, tomorrow, I want a full audit of everyone operating under our protection. Every debt collector, every small-time operation, everyone who touches civilian lives. Looking for something specific? Anyone who operates like Kessler. Anyone who preys on desperation. Simone's voice was cold, determined. We're cleaning house. Jeffrey absorbed this, recognizing the shift. That's going to shake things up. People won't like the new restrictions. Then they can find someone else to work for. Simone's tone left no room for negotiation. I'm done allowing fear to flow downward. If people want my protection, they follow my rules. And the first rule is, you don't crush the desperate. They pulled up to Simone's building luxury high-rise. Doorman, the trappings of success. But climbing to his penthouse, Simone felt the emptiness of it more acutely than ever before. Inside, the space was exactly as he'd left it, pristine, cold, designed for a man who lived alone and preferred it that way. Marble and steel and windows overlooking a city he controlled but never quite touched. He poured himself a drink but didn't consume it, standing instead at the window as dawn broke fully over the skyline. Tonight had started as routine, a simple errand, a walk through the park. Nothing memorable. It had ended with Simone Caruso kneeling in the snow, holding a dying infant, making promises to a terrified child, and somewhere in between, something fundamental had shifted. Morning light filled Simone's penthouse, harsh and revealing. He stood at the window still, the untouched drink warming in his hand, watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Ruth was probably making breakfast for Justin. Lily was probably crying for her morning bottle. Normal sounds of a normal family doing normal things. They'd never know how close they'd come to a different ending. His phone buzzed. Torres. Boss, the audit you wanted, we've identified 12 operations that fit the profile. Small-time debt collection, predatory lending, pressure tactics on vulnerable populations. Shut them down. All of them. By end of week? By end of day. Simone's voice was iron. And Torres? Spread the word. New rules are in effect immediately. Anyone targeting families, anyone pressuring the desperate, they're done. No warnings, no second chances. Understood. People are going to talk, boss. This is a big shift. Let them talk. Simone ended the call. He thought about Justin's question. Are you a good person or a bad person? The answer was still complicated, still gray. He'd done terrible things in his climb to power, made choices that haunted his rare quiet moments. One night of decency didn't erase years of calculated ruthlessness. But it was a start. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Yes, Mr. Caruso? Ruth's voice tentative. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Dr. Rothstein gave me your number in case we needed anything. It's fine. Is everything all right? Yes, everyone's fine. Better than fine, actually. A pause. Justin wanted me to call. He asked if maybe you'd like to come for dinner sometime. Nothing fancy, just he wants to say thank you properly. And honestly, so do I. Simone looked around his empty penthouse. at the life he'd built that kept everyone at arm's length. "Yeah," he heard himself say. "I'd like that." Ruth's relief was audible. "Really? I know you're probably busy. I'll make time." After they hung up, Simone finally set down the drink and headed to his bedroom. He needed sleep, needed to reset before the day's work began. But for the first time in years, the emptiness of his apartment didn't feel suffocating. He'd made a promise to a frightened child in a snowy park. He'd kept that promise, and in doing so, he'd answered a question he hadn't known he was asking. What was power really for? Not just control, not just fear, not just the machinery of dominance. Power was for protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, for reversing the flow of fear, for ensuring that desperate mothers didn't have to choose between dignity and survival. That's what Justin had taught him, kneeling in the snow with his crying sister, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't inspire fear. It's answer a call for help. Simone closed his eyes, and for the first time in a decade, he slept without the weight of emptiness crushing him. Because somewhere in the city, 3 people were safe, and he had put them there. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.
А все равно, как бы, сути дела не меняет, как бы зарплата плюс-минус везде там, больше, чуть меньше. Как бы, и, наверное, это все, вот эта общая ситуация, наверное, у многих привела, во-первых, сфера развлечений, да, всякие там кредиты и так далее, настолько загоняют каждого в задницу человека. И об этом на самом деле никто так-то не говорит. Какое количество сейчас, допустим, даже в те же сложные времена такие, когда вот сейчас идет там специальная военная операция, да, где люди вообще умирают, в принципе, за какую-то сумму денег. То есть какая мотивация, то есть у мужика идти типа на войну, воевать и как бы заработать денег? Потому что он вот в обычной жизни не понимает, типа, как реализовать себя. Он понимает, что он может пойти работать на какую-то работу, где зарплаты его все равно не будет хватать. Как бы тут тоже двойственная сторона. Хорошо, когда она есть, плохо, когда ее нету. Да, вот это маленькая даже зарплаты. Но морально-то ты все равно подавлен. Ты понимаешь, да, я там пойду туда, но как бы смысла мне этого не принесет большого. Да, у меня там станет, если я вообще не работаю и буду работать за 50 тысяч, хорошо, что они у меня есть, я смогу там покушать себе купить, но это же дизмораль. Когда ты заходишь в интернет и видишь, как люди там в Дубае летают, покупают себе огромное количество автомобилей какие-то, много всего такого, что ты за эту зарплату себе никогда в жизни позволить не сможешь. И как человеку оставаться морально типа сильным? Что ему нужно делать? Наверное, во-первых, это, наверное, все от семьи исходит, да? То есть, какая семья у тебя, как она построена. Если ты один живешь, это сложно, да, ты будешь сам себя, но у тебя опять-таки, возможно, родители, если есть, которые друзья поддержат тебя в какой-то момент, хотя бы просто отвлекут тебя от этих мыслей. А если у тебя, к примеру, там семья, жена, к примеру, да, есть дети, то тут, наверное, поддержка только от них исходит какая-то. Вот, чтобы не упиваться в своих мыслях о том, что какая нынче сложная жизнь. И, наверное, других-то вариантов в принципе-то и нету. Какие вот еще варианты, в принципе, изменить, поменять свою жизнь настолько, чтобы она была, казалась тебе удачной, да, реализованным себя в жизни, в чем-то. В чем, вот как проявляется на самом деле у нас реализованность? Наверное, у 90% случаев это финансовое благополучие, финансовая независимость. Это, наверное, одно из таких ключевых моментов, когда человек, наверное, считает себя реализованным, да, в этой жизни. То есть, как добиться этого? То есть, с учетом того, что даже возьмем нашу страну, да, сколько миллионов людей здесь живет, как каждому добиться этого результата? Непонятно. И с каждым годом просто ситуация становится все хуже и хуже. Все дорожает, люди зарабатывают либо столько же. Ну, даже если они зарабатывают столько же, на самом деле этого все уже недостаточно. К чему это все приведет на самом деле? В оконцове, наверное, мир погрязнет в большую депрессию в какую-то. Какие-то войны, возможно, или еще что-то еще больше глобальных таких вещей, которые не приведут ни к чему хорошему на самом деле. Поддержка каждого человека именно для того, чтобы он держался, наверное, морально, заключается в том, что, ну, наверное, дом, в который ты приходишь, должен быть крепостью твоей. Да? Что это единственное должно быть место, где ты будешь чувствовать себя под защитой. Для этого было придумано, наверное, своя пещера изначально, потом свои какие-то чумы, палатки различные, да, потом все это превратилось. На данный момент это у нас дома, квартиры, в которые мы приходим и должны ощущать себя в безопасности, чтобы можно быть немного морально расслабленным с учетом того, что ты выходишь каждый день на работу, на улицу, и все равно давление вот это вот, оно все равно присутствует. Когда ты заходишь в магазин, видишь цены эти, да, и так далее, не можешь себе что-то там приобрести, позволить на ежедневной основе, это откладывает большой, наверное, отпечаток. Не, наверное, а точно. И поэтому, когда возвращаясь домой, ты чувствуешь, вот хотя бы есть типа уголок того места, куда ты можешь прийти. Уголок на самом деле человеку много тоже не надо. Можно хотеть большего, но на самом деле человеку одному много не надо. Да? Ему нужно спальное место, спокойное место, где можно подумать. Ну, это когда ты один, к примеру, да? Когда у тебя есть семья, к примеру, ты приходишь домой, опять-таки, и тут хотя бы, да, поговорить о каких-то вещах. Просто об отрешенных вещах, наверное. И, возможно, при этих же условиях у тебя и появляется какая-то дополнительная мотивация для реализации себя. А когда у тебя нету ничего, вот это уже становится проблемой. И это у многих на самом деле. Что значит не иметь ничего? Тут, наверное, самое главное, дизмораль у человека еще возникает при том, что это уже, наверное, где-то в глубине души даже она возникает при даже хорошей финансовой подушке такой, которая у тебя есть, хороших финансовых деньгах, да, то есть, но нету вот внутреннего ощущения, к примеру, дружбы, семьи, любви и так далее. Это уже отдельно на самом деле разговор, потому что мы, вот, к примеру, можем взять, как сейчас вот Новстрой, если кто-то смотрит, насколько тяжело обладать такими финансами и не иметь, по сути, ничего. Ни друзей, ничего не иметь. Так главное это получается для бедных главное деньги, для богатых главное какое-то внутреннее ощущение нужности не из-за денег. Вот такой вот. И эта борьба какая-то такая и вот эти два слоя общества, богатые и бедные, они друг друга не понимают. На самом деле из-за этого, возможно. Потому что богатый человек, он уже не смотрит на деньги, он не считает эти деньги. Ему важно внутреннее вот это вот ощущение того, что он нужен без них даже. Это как Тони Старку сказали: а кто ты без костюма? На вот это я филантроп, тудым-сюдым, он сказал, да? Так и человеку, у которого много денег, ты задашь вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Ну, что ты представляешь себе без денег? Вот и это, наверное, возможно, таких людей богатых, как вот, например, там Мелстрой, задав ему этот вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Он на него ответить-то и не сможет. Обратная сторона людей бедных, да, вот если мы посмотрим, человеку